Okay, so we're going to run this bitmap message program. It says a bitmap image made up of the text you enter. Enter a word or message to display it like a bitmap. So let me write aloe vera. What did you say? Aloe vera. And it's pretty neat. It comes out with a bitmap image of the world. Right, so you have South America here, North America there, Europe, Africa, Korea, Indonesia, Singapore, and Australia, and even the two E's there. They're little New Zealands. A little bit of Antarctica down there, and a little bit of the Arctic at the top. So up the top we have a doc string, and it says a bitmap image. Displays a string in bitmap image form. By the way, you can view this code via the GitHub link. It's my GitHub link. That's below this video. But the program runs a bitmap image. So what is a bitmap? Well, firstly, I was surprised how much time it took to even get an idea of what a bitmap is. The quality of the writing on the internet, including Wikipedia, sometimes is poor in my opinion. Anyway, this is the best I could come up with from 20 minutes of stuffing around. It might not be entirely encompassing of what a bitmap is, and if you have a better definition, feel free to comment below this video. So I've got here that a bitmap is a pixelated image originating from a particular domain, right? A bitmap image is pixelated because if we zoomed in enough on the image, we'd see lots of colored in squares. So, for example, this here is a bitmap image. This here is a bitmap image. And even ones that look smooth, like these ones here, of Super Mario, if we zoomed in on that, to say we zoomed in on the edge of his hand there, it'll end up looking like this. Like it'll be very pixelated and it'll have lots of squares. A bitmap image is pixelated because if we zoomed in enough on the image, we'll see lots of colored in squares. In this case, right, this case over here, this program, the bitmap image is a picture of the world originating from line 7. If you imagine lots of square boxes side by side, then each star, each multiplication sign or star, represents a colored in square, and the blanks represent squares that are not colored in. Because this is a text-based program, each square has a string in it. So these are converted to strings. Well, the type is a string. The bitmap is converted to a string. So because this is a text-based program, each square has a string in it instead of being colored in, because it's obviously not colored in. The opposite of a squarey bitmap image is a vector image, which is a more advanced image that always shows smooth edges when zoomed in. So if you've done Photoshop kind of stuff or Corel Draw stuff, and you probably know that there's vector images necessary for more high-end image and things like logos and stuff. So we get onto the program now. Import sys. So what is the sys in import sys? This is the first time I've run into the sys module. It's a module because I'm only an intermediate Python programmer. But if you want me to know more about it, comment below. If you want to educate me on this a bit more, let me know in the comments below. I'll read it and educate myself more on it. So the sys module provides functions and variables used to manipulate different parts of the Python runtime environment. At line 34, which is here, at line 34 we see that if the user just presses enter instead of entering something, so if the message asks for user input, and if that user input is nothing, like you just press enter, if the user just presses enter instead of entering something, the system module will exit the program. And so I suspect that this is an easier way to exit this program compared to using a while loop with breaks. I mean, it's looked pretty good to me. It's a good way of doing it. Like I say, if you want to educate me more on this system module, let me know. But I can, from what I'm interpreting here, all he's had to do is import system module. The reason is because he wants to use the system exit method down here. So that saves him having to put stuff in a while loop and indent lines. And that might be important because of this part here, particularly important because of that. But at any rate, it saves him having to do a while loop. So I think that's why he's put in imported the system module. One of the reasons why. So here's the bitmap image here. It's actually in a doc string. It's got 3 quotation marks there. And so a bitmap image made up of the text you enter a word or message to display it like a bitmap. And so I've already described this. So here it's pretty short code, this. So here we have a for loop within a for loop. And it's saying for each line in bitmap, which is up here, dot splitlines. So what is splitlines? The splitlines method splits a string into a list. Let's come over here. The splitting is done at line breaks. So here's the example. Here's the example code here to show that. So we're looking at this part here. So if I run this, you'll get thank you for the music. So that's one item, comma, welcome to the jungle, another item, and it's been put in a list. And the reason it's been put in a list is because of the splitlines method. Were I to eliminate the splitlines method and just print out the text variable and run that, you just get the normal thing here. Thank you for the music, because it's a new line, welcome to the jungle. But the splitlines method will print out this in a list consisting of 2 strings in this instance. So that's what this line is doing here. So for each line in bitmap, split the lines. It does it for each line, make him a string. Then we want to loop over each character in the line. So for each item and bit, that's what he's called it here. It's called, because he's using the enumerate function for each line. So that means the enumerate function, I've talked about this in the previous video, but I'll just quickly run it over again. The enumerate function, it returns both the index of each item and the value of each item as I loop through a tuple or a list. So here we have apple, banana, and cherry. Now if I were just to say print x, it'll just print out a tuple, apple, banana, and cherry, exactly as I said here, if I were to print that out. But if I were to enumerate apple, banana, and cherry, right, and then print it out, I'll run it down here, we'll have, instead what we have is we have this is what it will run. You have 0, 1, 2, it'll autofill 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it will associate that with each item in a list. So it actually indexes each item in the list. That's what the enumerate function does. So over here, because you've got 0 and apple, 1 and banana, you need to name the indexes. So in this case, you can name it anything, but he's named it I, presumably for index or for item. So for each item, so 0, 1, 2, and then he's named apple, banana, and cherry bit, right? But not quite, because not quite apple, banana, and cherry, because this is just my own little example here. But he's named the index I, and he's named the items that are indexed bit, which is a good name because we are doing a bitmap. So for each item and bit in the line, in each line, right? Because we've created a list for each line in the bitmap because we use splitlines method. If the bit is a Boolean statement equals a space, which is these spaces, each of one of these here in between, that's a space, right? If it's a space, then print an empty space, since there's a space in the bitmap. So print the empty space, right? And at the end of it, just make it a string with no space. So that's why we've got this here happening. That's how we can have that happening. So that'll keep on looping until we get to one of these stars, which is why we have this else part here. Yeah. So this is why we have the else. And this is an else statement, not an else if statement. So anything other than a space will be captured in this if conditional statement here. So if it's not an empty string, a space, then print a character from the message. So the message is what the user input has put in here. And here's where it gets interesting, because we have the two square brackets, which means that we want each element inside the message. So we're aiming for each character or each element inside the user's input. And we're going to print out each one of them. Now I'll do some explanation of what all this is here in between it. So if we have a look over here, I'll just make this bigger. Yes, so if we have a look over here, and I just said that message equals wobble, say. Now, we have to enumerate that message in order to index each element. So the W, O, B, B, each one of them, so W will be 0, O will be 1, B will be 2, and so on. That's what the enumerate function does, as I've explained above. And we're printing I, which is the index, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, using the modular. And it's only going to go to the length of the message. So if I run this code here, we're going to get wobble, right? Wobble going downwards. Now if I just printed the message without trying to get the index of it, of each element, without this part here, what will happen? Well, let's run it and see. It'll go wobble, 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 and it actually isn't going to index it, right? And it's doing it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's doing it 6 times because there's six letters. So that's why we got to have it indexed, so we can get each element printing out that way. But notice that it's gone downwards instead of sideways. So, we want it to go sideways from left to right. We don't want it to go downwards. We could have it going downwards, but because we're asking for user input, it's going to make more sense if you're reading it left to right, because you'll be able to read what the word was, what the message actually was, easier, because you read left to right, obviously. So we've got this problem then of it going downwards instead of across. And this part here is good to do because we know that we've got each element from the single string here. So we know we're doing the right thing. But we've got to add the end. The end, what's end? End is just quickly explain what end is again. End could end up here. Where's end here? Sorry. End. Didn't put it in there. Okay, well, end's just saying that the end is necessary because of this reason. When I run it, it will actually, we know that it's got each element from wobble. We know it's got each letter. We've just shown that by the fact that it was able to do each letter going downwards. So we know we've got that sorted, but we need to go from left to right. So that's why we need the end. I guess that's like it's an inbuilt, it's string formatting. End's a string formatting technique. So that means that when the loop gets to W, at the end of the loop, it'll get to O, and it'll add that O onto the end of W, as opposed to running it downhill as you had before. So that's why we have the end. And so that's the code. Now, if you wanted to, you could change this image around to something else. You can make it a face, or you can make it, the Eiffel Tower, or Australia, or a whale, or a tiger, and you can literally change this, and this code will still run the same way. It'll just change the bitmap image around. So I hope you've learnt something from that. I know I learnt something from this. This is a good little easy program.